Alright, roll back the clock 20 years. You're looking for a long travel bike that you can still pedal around. You're looking at something like this. The Rocky Mountain Switch S3. Alright, so cliff notes. 170mm travel front, 152 rear, rolling on 26-inch wheels, repping a 2x9 drivetrain, as well as possibly the coolest component line at the time, Race Face Diablos. Flames just make everything cooler. Now, I've had this bike for a year or so. I picked it up, it was all original, and honestly didn't have to do a whole lot of work to it. Normally with older bikes I have to pull them apart and check bearings and stuff, but this thing, I'm pretty sure the grease was original, it was just extremely discolored. But replaced the stock tires, they were unfortunately dry rotted. Replaced the brakes, they were leaking and basically inoperable. And added a telescoping seat post. In case you're wondering what the difference 20 years does between a modern enduro bike and quote-unquote freeride bike of the past, I'll insert an image here. I took a bunch of measurements between the two to kind of give an idea as to how much of a difference there is. As you can tell by looking at it, the bike is dirty. Put about 10 or 12 rides on it. We're going to segue into riding clips of it now, and then I will circle back for my thoughts of what it's like to swing a leg over a 20-year-old bike. Alrighty. Jackoon. Should be all right. Like an idiot? Sure. I think we should be all right. Oh, that rock is wet. Woo! Okay. I puckered a little bit, I'm not gonna lie. Woo. I don't think I'm gonna have to nose pick this corner. I think the wheelbase might be short enough that I might be able to just straight line it. Huh? Oh yeah, that's so much easier on this. Cool. Ooh. Good. Quick camera check. Still good. Alright, we're back. What was this thing like to ride? I guess we can start with climbing. To be completely honest, it wasn't particularly great. The 1x2 drivetrain and telescoping seat post is kind of why it was even remotely feasible for me to pedal around. Coil front and rear meant that there was a lot of pedal bob, even though the rear shock had a little bit of adjustment for that. Seated was okay. The telescoping seat post, I was able to get high enough so that I was able to pedal comfortably, but with the seat tube angle, it meant that the seat was so far back that it felt like you were literally on top of the rear axle. The reach wasn't particularly great. Standing up and trying to pedal meant that my knees would hit the handlebars. Give you an idea, that's roughly about how high the seat needs to be. I don't care what anybody says, dropper posts have been a godsend. Okay, descending. Apologies for all the clattering from the chain slap. Overall, wasn't too bad. The fork and the shock did a very good job, even for their age, of being very smooth and plush. The bike seemed to do more decent on slower, tighter technical trails. Anytime speeds increased, it definitely felt like you were hauling ass. Past that, like, it's these kinds of bikes, you definitely feel like you're very upright and kind of on top of the bike, versus the more modern bike where it's low and you kind of ride in the bike. But yeah, hopefully that was mildly entertaining or enjoyable. I've been playing around with this idea of doing episodic retro rides for old mountain bikes for probably almost 2 years. It's just procrastinating at this point, to be honest. I had a basic idea, and as I've been getting video and then doing the editing and stuff, I haven't quite figured out exactly what direction I want to go, if I want to keep it fairly basic like this one is going to be, or maybe go a little more in depth. That might be something that I change over time. I do have a handful of other bikes and frames from this era that I would like to cycle through and do riding videos on, so if that's something that interests you, feel free to stay tuned, and thank you for watching.